Hi, Stampin' friends. I'm Mary Nabe. Welcome to my Stampin' Piece studio in Westerville, Ohio. Today I've got a great video to share with you. It is July 2024, and I'm introducing a new 12 by 12 one-sheet wonder that you can use to make 10 cards. I will show you everything you need to know, from cutting the 12 by 12 sheet of pattern paper all the way to completing the 10 different cards. I will give you the measurements, dimensions that you need for everything. Once I've completed the video, if you would like the PDF version of this tutorial to save or to print later for future use, you can get it in one of two ways. You can get it free by placing a Stampin' Up! Order with me of $50 or more before shipping and tax. You can place that order in my online store, or you can contact me for assistance ordering to get that PDF tutorial free. Or you can purchase it in my PDF store, which is at stampinpiece.com. Click Shop in the pink menu bar, and then click PDF tutorials at the bottom of the drop-down menu. And that costs $18. The PDF tutorial will include the 12 by 12 one-sheet wonder template with cutting instructions. You'll also get 6 coordinating card sketches with cutting dimensions for all pieces, and you'll get complete instructions for the 10 cards you see me make in this video. And these 10 cards feature the Frames and Flowers Specialty Designer Series paper and the Simply Said stamp set by Stampin' Up! So let's get started right now, because I'm excited to show you this month's 12 by 12 one-sheet wonder. Before I show you how to cut your 12 by 12 pattern paper, I want to point out that in the Stampin' Up! 2024 to 2025 annual catalog on page 29, you will see the Frames and Flowers Specialty Designer Series paper that I'm using today. I also want to point out that on page 19, you'll find the Simply Said stamp set. Oh my goodness, friends. You are not going to believe what happened to me. This has never happened like this. I just went through and cut the designer series paper, giving instructions, got all finished, and then was ready to show you how to use all these pieces for my cards when I realized my camera stopped recording the video. I cannot believe it. Not so bad, right? Because I can redo it, except that I just used my last piece of this designer series paper, which is the one in particular I wanted to use. It's the one I used for all of my samples and the one I used in making my complete PDF tutorial for the 10 cards. But I don't want to skip showing you how to cut the 12 by 12 template. So I'm going to show you how to cut your 12 by 12 pattern paper, but I am cutting with a different sheet. It's from the same set of the Frames and Flowers Designer Series paper pack, but it's a different one than I'm using on the cards because, like I said, I don't have any more of that particular sheet. And I've double-checked, triple-checked, quadruple-checked that my camera is still recording. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut at 4 inches, okay, 4 inches. Then I'm going to slide over the remaining piece and cut it 3 inches. then 2 inches, then I'm going to cut at 1 3/4 inch, make sure that's straight in there, 1 3/4 inches. Oh, come on, Mary. There we go. And then my remaining piece will be 1 1/4 inch wide. Now I've kept all these strips in the same order that I cut them. I'm going to turn them to the horizontal position, and then I'm going to cut them again. So on my 4-inch by 12-inch strip, I'm going to cut at 3-inch increments. And I will set those aside. Then I'm going to take my 3-inch by 12-inch strip and cut this at 4 inches. Four inches, 4 inches, and then I'll be left with a third piece that measures 4 inches. For my 2-inch strip, I'm going to be cutting at 1 1/2 inch increments. And by the time I finish cutting this strip at 1 1/2 inch increments, I will have 8 rectangles that measure 2 inches by 1 1/2. For my 1 3/4 inch strip, I'm going to be cutting at 5 1/4 inches, 5 1/4 again, and then I will have this piece left. And I will use this piece along with all of the pieces that I cut from that 12 by 12 piece of pattern paper. For my last strip, I'm going to cut at 5 1/2 inches and then 5 1/2 inches again. And once again, I will be using this small 1 1/4 by 1 inch piece. So I want to keep every single piece that I've cut because I will use every single piece on one of my cards. So now I'll show you. I'm going to bring in my first sheet that I cut before I realized my camera wasn't recording. Bummer, but that's okay. Sometimes the best laid plans don't quite work out, but we move on and we make them work. So as you can see, I've got all the same cuts, sizes, and number of pieces for each of these. So I will prep card bases and things for this set later. But for now, I'm going to be using these like I originally planned to. So I'm just going to slide them out of the way so I don't get them mixed up. I like to keep them in the order that I cut them in. Quick reminder that all of the sentiments you see me use today are from that Simply Said stamp set. And I did take the liberty of prepping all of my card bases, card pieces, and the sentiments. So for what is card sketch A, I'm going to be making 2 horizontal cards. All of my card bases that you'll see in this video are the same size, 5.5 by 8.5 inches, and I scored it 4 1/4 down the middle and folded in half. Every card base, I put a 4-inch by 5 1/4 inch piece of white cardstock inside for writing. And with 2 of the 4-inch by 3-inch pieces from my first strip, I'm going to make 2 cards. So I'm going to take these 2 pieces of designer series paper, and I'm going to adhere them to pieces of pretty peacock cardstock that are cut 4 1/4 by 3 1/4 inches. So on the PDF tutorial, if you decide to purchase it or get it for free with your $50 order with me, all these dimensions will be there. But like I said, you're also getting them all in this video if you don't want to purchase that, or you have a demonstrator that you're working with and don't want to place an order with me. Whatever it is, I respect your choice. So across the center of each card front, I'm putting a 2-inch by 5.5 inch piece of petal pink. So my card base is Lost Lagoon, and this 2-inch by 5.5 inch strip is petal pink. Make sure I have that on straight. And then I'm going to adhere these to the middle or the center of my card fronts. So just kind of eyeball it so that you have kind of an equal border of cardstock on the top and bottom, and then the left and right. Again, just centering that on my card front. And then here, I've punched 2 circles. The white is 1 3/4 inch circle, and then the Lost Lagoon layer is a 2-inch circle. I used my circle punches for that. I'm just going to set that right in the center, like so. And what makes this Frames and Flowers specialty designer series paper pack special or a little unique is that it has 3 sheets of pattern paper, 1 of each, and then you'll get 3 sheets of die cuts. There are so many, I don't even know how many die cuts there are. There are so many, as you can see from the catalog pictures. But I'm pulled some of those die cuts, and I'm simply going to adhere them to my card. And, I think I'm going to use my mini, let's see here, some mini dimensionals to adhere these, just to help them pop off the card front. And this one I can use some regular size dimensionals because it is larger. The die cuts, there are, like I said, there are 3 12 by 12 sheets of die cuts. There are a few that repeat, but many of them, there's just 1 of each. So there's so many fun, fabulous pieces to use on your cards. It's a great opportunity to mix and match and just kind of let yourself kind of go wild. You could also use your multi-purpose glue to adhere these leaves if that's your preference, but I just kind of like the way the dimensionals help them pop off the card. Kind of brings a little more attention to them and a little more interest to the card itself. Whoops. My stem is a little too long, so I'm just going to tear off the very bottom of it because I don't want my leaves extending beyond the outer edges of the cards. So that's card sketch A, and I've made 2 of those. Now I'm going to take those other 2 2-inch by or 4-inch by 3-inch pieces of designer series paper that I cut from my One Sheet Wonder. And I've prepped all my other pieces, and I'm really excited to show you this card because this is a funfold card, and you'll make 2 of them. So I'm just adding my 4-inch by 3-inch DSP to Pretty Pink, or not Pretty Pink, Pretty Peacock that measures 4 1/4 by 3 1/4 inches. Okay, 4 1/4 by 3 1/4 inches of Pretty Peacock. Now let me give you the dimensions of the funfold card base. Okay, it is 5 1/2 inches across and 6 1/4 inches tall. And then I've scored at 4 1/4 inches. So 5 1/2 by 6 1/4, and I've scored at 4 1/4 inches, and then folded that small flap to the top front. I've got Petal Pink that measures 5 1/4 by 4 inches, and I'm using this on the inside of the card base. Now, before I put the rest of these pieces on, I need to pull 2 more of my pieces of designer series paper. I need the 5 1/4 by 1 3/4 inch pieces for my flaps. Okay, 5 1/4 by 1 3/4 inch pieces. So this would have been from strip number 4. And I'm just going to, well, I could adhere it this way, but I decided I want to flip that over. So I'm going to use the contrasting side. You choose if you want it to be the same size or if you want to use the contrasting side. Oops, I just put that on the wrong side. Have you ever done that? Put your adhesive on the wrong side? Okay, if it's the Stampin' Up seal, I can just do this and get it off with my finger. Or if you have an adhesive eraser, I got this on Amazon, it's just a few dollars. You can use this as well. And if you don't have this, like I said, just use your finger. It works. It's a little gummy, but it works. Okay, put that there. And now I'm ready to adhere my layers. Okay, I want to center these on my card front, but when I adhere them, I only want adhesive on this section that will be touching this flap. So here's a trick to doing that. So take it like this. On the piece that I'm adhering down, I'm going to put adhesive only at the top. And on this strip, I'm going to put it near the bottom of the flap, okay? And that way, when I adhere this, that piece will only stick to this top flap, and I'm not getting adhesive anywhere else on that card. So let's do the same thing here. I want to adhere this like this. So I'm going to flip this over, put my adhesive at the top of this piece and at the bottom of the flap on the front of my card. Center that on my card front and then press it down into place. Now, for the writing portion inside, I've cut 2 pieces of basic white cardstock that measure 4 inches by 3 inches, 4 inches by 3 inches. So they're actually the same size as the DSP on the front. And what I'm going to do is just center this here. And because I cut it the same size as the DSP and not the same size as my Pretty Peacock cardstock, it's easily covered. It's easily covered. It's hidden when that card is in the closed position. Okay, so let's add our sentiments. For this, I used the Thinking of You sentiment from the Simply Said stamp set, and I stamped it and punched the circle so that the sentiment is in the bottom half of the circle. And you'll see why in just a moment, but I wanted my sentiment in the bottom half of that 1 3/4 inch white circle. And then the Pretty Peacock circle behind it measures 2 inches. Center those on my layers. And then I pulled a couple of die cuts from the Frames and Flowers pack, just to put right up there. I'm using multi-purpose glue, especially on this one, because I just need tiny little dots. You really don't have to worry about having a lot or using a lot of the glue, just a tiny bit, because a lot of this is going to be hanging over the layered circles. So those are the cards I made using Card Sketch B, which is in the PDF tutorial. Next, remember when I said you're going to end up with some small pieces? In the 4th column, which is where I got these strips for those last 2 cards, I've got this little piece, and it measures 1 3/4 inches by 1 1/2. And I'm using it just that size, just the way it is. So I've got my card base of Pretty Peacock, and then I've got all these little rectangles to layer this DSP on. So the DSP again is 1 1/2 by 1 3/4 inches. I'm putting it on Pretty Peacock, which measures 1 3/4 by 2 inches. And then I will adhere that to, or I said petal, I meant to say petal pink. Did I say Pretty Peacock? The petal pink layer is 1 3/4 by 2 inches. I'm going to adhere these layers to Pretty Peacock which measures 2¼ by 2½ inches. Okay, 2¼ by 2½ inches. I'm just going to center it there. And then these layers, I'm going to put on top of Lost Lagoon that measures 2½ by 2¾ inches. Now, this piece is ultimately going to go on the front of the card base. However, before I do that, though, this is the only card that I did not pre-stamp the sentiment because I wanted to show you this. I want to stamp Happy Birthday here, but I don't want to stamp it too low or too high. But I also don't want to adhere everything to this piece in case I make a mistake in stamping, because then I could flip it over. So what I'm going to suggest that you do is take your layers and set them down where you want them. And I've put mine on so that on the top or left, top, and right sides, I have a pretty equal margin of the petal pink showing. So now I'm going to stamp my sentiment. I'm inking up the Happy Birthday stamp from the Simply Said stamp set with Pretty Peacock ink, and I want to get it approximately halfway between the bottom of my layers and the bottom of this piece of petal pink cardstock, and kind of center it left to right as well. And that looks pretty good, okay? But you do want to take that extra time to put your small layers together and just set them in place before you stamp. And you know what? I'm going to keep this flat. I don't want dimensionals in that spot. I think it might be a little too high when I add my die cut. So, okay, got that adhered now, and I'll put this onto my card front before I add the die cut piece to it. And as you can see on these few cards where I've used die cuts from the Frames and Flowers collection, these die cuts are really acting as an embellishment. But there are many die cuts you'll see in the set that would act more as a focal point. But for me, I'm using these as an embellishment on the cards. Okay, so that's the 5th card we made. Now the 6th card. Again, I've got a Pretty Peacock card base, white in the middle. I have a piece of petal pink, which measures 4 inches by 5¼ for my card front. No stamping on this one. And then I'm going to take one of the 3 pieces from that second strip I cut from my One Sheet Wonder, the 3-inch by 12-inch strip, and I cut it at 4-inch increments. I'm using one of those and mounting it onto Pretty Peacock cardstock that measures 3¼ by 4¼ inches. And I'm going to leave this corner up just for now. And the tiniest little piece, the last piece left in cutting my One Sheet Wonder, was this 1¼ by 1-inch piece of Designer Series paper. I'm going to flip it over, and then I'm just going to fold it in half. And I'm going to just tuck it between these 2 layers, not quite at the bottom. and then press down. Okay, I've got adhesive under there, so it puts that right into place. Whoops. Guess I need to press a little harder. There we go. So really, this tiny little piece of DSP that I saved is acting again as an embellishment for this card. So let me now add this to my card front. Just like that. And then I pre-stamped my sentiment, thanks, and punched it with, I stamped on white with Pretty Peacock ink, and I punched it with a 1.5 inch circle, and then adhered that to a 1 3/4 inch Pretty Peacock circle. Okay, so now we have 6 of our 10 cards done. And let's move on to the remaining cards. So the next card sketch, I'll be making 2 cards and we'll be using the remaining 2 pieces of 3 inch by 4 inch DSP. So once again, I've got Pretty Peacock card bases, white cardstock in the center. These pieces of DSP, 3 inch by 4 inch, I'm going to mount onto Lost Lagoon cardstock that measures 3 1/4 by 4 1/4 inches. And then I'm going to take each set of layers here and mount them onto Petal Pink cardstock, which measures 3 3/8 by 4 3/8 inches. 3 3/8 by 4 3/8. That's how I get just that small border of Petal Pink. Now, before I add these to the front, I need 2 more pieces of designer series paper. So I'm taking my 1 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch pieces of DSP, okay, of my pattern paper, and I want to use the reverse side for these strips once again. And this time I'm going to be careful to put my adhesive on the correct side. And then I will adhere these strips near the fold on the left side, but leaving a little space, you know, maybe up to 1/4 inch. You don't have to measure it, but just a small space between the fold and the strip of pattern paper. And then I will adhere my layers to each of these. And it's not going to be quite centered. It's going to be a little more towards the right. I guess you would say I'm kind of centering it between the edge of my pattern paper strip and the outer edge of my card base. But if you want to go right to the center, you can. It doesn't make that big of a difference on this card layout. But to me, it just seemed a little more balanced when I did it that way. And again, the same thing on the other card base. And these are hello cards, stamped sentiment in Pretty Peacock ink on basic white, punched with a 1.5-inch circle, and then layered that onto a 1 3/4-inch circle of Lost Lagoon. Now keep in mind, if you are not using the same sentiment from the Simply Said stamp set, or if you're using a different stamp set entirely, you'll want to adjust the size of your circle or whatever shape you're using for the sentiments that you're using. I want you to keep in mind that whenever I do a one-sheet wonder like this, I'm choosing to show it to you with a particular designer series paper and stamp set. These one-sheet wonders, though, you can use with any designer series paper, any pattern papers that you like, and any stamps that you like. Okay, this is just my version. Okay, just my version. Now, when I get to this point, I have my 8 2-inch by 1.5-inch rectangles left. And I'm going to use 4 of these on each of these next 2 cards. I've got petal pink card bases, standard size. I've got 5 1/4 by 4-inch pieces of Lost Lagoon. No, I take that back. That's not the correct measurement. The correct measurement, because I wanted just a small border of the petal pink showing, is 5 3/8 by 4 1/8. 5 3/8 by 4 1/8 inch. Okay. Then I've got Pretty Peacock cardstock that measures 4 1/4 by 3 inches, and I'm going to layer it onto petal pink, again with a very small narrow border. So the petal pink layer is 4 3/8 by 3 3/8. So my Pretty Peacock is 4 1/4 by 3 1/4 inches, and the petal pink layer is 4 3/8 by 3 3/8 inches. And look at that. That is not cut to the right size at all. So let me just grab. Oh, this has been a day. Let me just say that. This has been a day. Goodness, first the recording stopped. So 3 3/8 by 4 3/8. But I guess that's life, right? There are many worse things than cutting your piece of cardstock wrong, or even having your recording stop when you don't want it to. But that's life, right? We go on. We persevere. Okay, so on each of these layers, I'm going to use 2 of my rectangles in the exact, I should say, what I'm considering the front side. And then I'm going to use 2 on each with the reverse side. And for this particular step, I'm going to suggest once again that you use the multi-purpose glue, the liquid glue. And I'm going to put some in the center. I'm not going to press real hard. I'm going to put them all in place. But because I'm using some of this liquid glue right in the center of each piece, just kind of putting a blob in the center, that will give me time to move these pieces around, slide them into place so that I have equal spacing between and around each of my rectangles. Okay. Now, once I feel like they're in place, I've got equal borders all the way around, I can just take a flat hand and press them into place, help them stick and not slide around anymore. Or here's another tip. Just gently take your silicone craft sheet and just drop it on the layers and then press down. But I find that when I use the silicone craft sheet in this way, there's less chance of it sliding around than me moving my hand directly on top of it. Either way works, but that's just if you have that silicone craft sheet, that's another way you can put it to use for you. Another way you can make it work for you. Whoops. And now I'm just going to start pressing down on these as I slide them into place. Whoop. And now I think I'm ready to drop my silicone mat on top and press them down. Then I'm going to flip them over, add some adhesive to the back, and I will, let me close that up so I don't make a mess. And then they'll be ready to add to our card fronts, just centering them. And doesn't that look pretty with all the different layers in there? And I love that on this card sketch or the card layout, I have used some tiny borders. And then lastly, I stamped Miss You in pretty peacock ink on white cardstock, and I punched with a 1-inch circle punch. I love to send Miss You cards to friends I haven't seen in a while, and a lot of times I send Miss You cards to my daughter, Emily, in Cincinnati. So let me bring all of the cards back in to show you one more time. There was a total of 10. So these were the first 2 cards we made. Card sketch A, card sketch B, we made 2 of, and that was our funfold. Then we made 1 of card sketch C, 1 of card sketch D, and 2 of card sketch E, and 2 of card sketch F, for a total of 10 cards, 6 different layouts, and 1 sheet of designer series paper. So I really hope you like this demonstration. I am enjoying doing this series of monthly 12 by 12 one sheet wonder demonstrations. Once again, I want to remind you that while I use the Frames and Flowers designer series paper and the Simply Said stamp set, you can use this one sheet wonder with any products of your choice. And if you would like to have all of the dimensions for all of the cards, cutting the 12 by 12 pattern paper, everything you need to make this one sheet wonder and the 10 cards has been provided for you in this video. However, if you would like the PDF version of the tutorial, you can get that free with a $50 order in the month of July 2024 when you place a $50 Stampin' Up! Order with me, either in my online store or by contacting me. Or you can purchase the PDF tutorial itself for $18 at stampinpiece.com. Click Shop in the pink menu bar, and then PDF tutorial at the bottom of the drop-down menu. Keep in mind that when you have the PDF tutorial includes the 12 by 12 template, the 6 different card sketches with all of the measurements, of course, supply list, color photos, and instructions for all of these cards as well. If you choose to purchase that or get it free by placing an order with me, you will have that forever. And you can use that 12 by 12 template, One Sheet Wonder template, anytime with any DSPs. The other thing is you'll get the 6 different card sketches with all of the dimensions. And you can use each individual card sketch anytime you want as well. You don't have to use the card sketches just with the One Sheet Wonder. So you're getting a whole lot of value out of that PDF tutorial. If you have any questions, please let me know. I thank you so much for viewing this demonstration. I love what I do. And even more than that, I love sharing creativity and inspiration with all of you. Have a great day, and I look forward to sharing more creative projects and inspiration with you in the future. Bye-bye.